So, this is a story about how I met my spirit guide or guardian angel or whatever you want to call it. The person that not the person, but like the spirit or the entity that takes care of you. Well, it first started, I was fairly young, like, I don't know, around 5 or 6, maybe younger than that. And we were living in Junction City, Kansas. And we went to Milford Lake. And while we were at Milford Lake, uh, I, I asked this girl if I could, like, use her inner tube. And at first she said no, but I was like, can I just try it? I want to see how far I can get and then I'll bring it back to you. And then my sister came running up to me. And when my sister ran up to me, my sister convinced her to let us use the inner tube for a little bit. And we went out into the water with this inner tube. Well, that day, while we were in the water with the inner tube, I was pushing it back so far because I could feel the bottom of the sand at my feet. And I wanted to push it just barely, but my sister was screaming and she kept trying to flip it up. And I told her to keep her legs down, but she wouldn't. So the inner tube flipped and we almost started drowning. And I felt like I was under there for a longer period of time than she was because she was grabbing my hair and pushing me down so she could get air. But, I know I was underwater longer than she was. Well, we got saved by the lifeguards at the lake. And so when the lifeguards brought us back to my mom and dad, we were like, coughing and sick, whatever. And then soon after that, my father left. And, but we had moved into this house, and it was in Junction City, and I knew there was something unusual about the house. I don't know, there's something unusual about the house. So, when we were back at home, we all went to bed, and then soon after, my father left for Germany. Well, they took us out. Wait, yeah, soon after he left for Germany, and so he was in the military, and he was stationed over there for 2 years. But we stayed in the house, and my mom, my sister, and me, and I slept up in the upstairs area, and I could always feel every night that my bed was like shaking and bouncing, but it was like not real hard. It was like kind of almost like in the Wizard of Oz where you see the bed like move around in the bedroom when Dorothy's up in the tornado. Well, that's what it felt like to me. So, like, every night I'd go to bed and I'd feel this, like, movement in my bed. And as things progressed on, like, soon after that, I got really scared in my room, but I stayed in my room because it always felt like something was watching me coming in, but it wasn't like a ghost, like a human ghost. It was like something else. And I would lay in my bed, and it felt like it was always moving around throughout the room, and I kept always looking at the door, and I would see like this like being standing there, coming close to me. And then one day, I was outside playing with a dog, and our dog's name was Charmin. And all of a sudden I heard, my name's Jonathan, in, in, in my head. But it wasn't like in my ear. It was like a thought, like kind of like a thought, but someone said it in my brain. And I was like, okay, Jonathan. And I was like really obsessed with the name Jonathan after that, but I was still in my bedroom, and I would be kind of scared because this being that didn't look human but looked like a blue light kind of would like come and wait by my door throughout the night as I felt my bed moving. And then soon after, my mother moved me to the basement room of the house, and she took the upstairs room. And weird things, like it always felt like they were jumping on me, like in my sleep, and paralyzing me. And I remember one night, like in the middle of the night, it must have been like 3 o'clock or something, like I was screaming and hollering because it just like wouldn't let me go. So I was like, I didn't know what to do, but I felt like that's where it began, like where we started meeting Jonathan. Well, when my dad came back from Germany, he took us, I think, out to Milford Lake or something. And then we drove back home, and when we got home, the garage door was open, and all the lights in the garage were on. Then soon after that, we only lived in Junction City for a brief time of my childhood until my dad came back from Germany, and then we were transferred or stationed to Pennsylvania. Well, I wasn't really connected. I didn't feel like I was really connected to Jonathan during that time, but until we moved into another haunted house. And this was in McDonald, Pennsylvania. And this house was built in like the late 1700s. It was part of the Underground Railroad. Like I remember like going into the basement and like seeing these spirits of like scared black people in the basement, and a weird thing happened to me like upstairs in my bedroom, because we had this huge spiraling staircase and my bedroom was just right next to it. And one night, like I always like latched my door closed, and then all of a sudden it like flung open, and then I saw this woman, like ghost like woman, I don't know, she didn't look like a real human, anymore. But she was like a ghost, kind of like, sort of like, I don't know, possessed ghost. And so, and she crawled up into my bed and she performed oral sex on me. And then, after I jizzed, she jumped back and then went into my bedroom closet, and the door slammed, and my door slammed back shut to my bedroom. But I didn't notice Jonathan, but Jonathan was always in the back of my head. I mean, this house was so weird that like right before school each day, I would sit on the pot, like the toilet, and I would play this game with the ghost. Like I'd roll up a piece of toilet paper and then I would, and the trash can to the bathroom was clear at the other end, and like I would toss the toilet paper, and sometimes the ghost would smack the toilet paper, it would fly to the side, and that would be like, no, I'm gonna have a bad day at school. Then I'd do it again, and I'd toss it again, and if I made it into the basket, then, you know, I'd have a good day. So it was always this game, you know, I'd play, and I didn't know who it was, but they would do that, they would smack it, so I'd play like this weird game of basketball, or, you know, with this ghost in the bathroom. And, but Jonathan wasn't around during that time. Well, after my dad retired from the military, we moved to Salina, Kansas, where I live now. And I was 15, and it was 1993, and then I was 16, and I had finally got my driver's license. And I was hanging out with these three people in high school, and we were doing illicit things at that time. So it's like 1993, 1994, you know, and I was 16 years old, and it's 2018 right now, and I'm 40. I'm going to be 41. So we were in some illicit activity. So one day during Skyfire, we dosed, and acid at the fireworks on 4th of July, and all of a sudden I saw Jonathan. It was crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but I saw Jonathan on a piece of plant. and I picked this plant, and I could see Jonathan because he was like this blue light being, and it wasn't like, it's like he got himself really, really small and sat on this plant, basically. And I carried this plant, you know, the whole time while I was tripping, because, you know, it was, you know, my guardian angel on there. And so after that, I didn't really notice Jonathan anymore, even after I had moved out of Salina for a couple of years to Lawrence, Kansas. He wasn't really around, even though I dosed a lot during that time. But you know, I don't do drugs like that anymore. So I'm too old for that, and too sick, and I'm on too much medication now. So, but at that time, when I lived in a haunted house in Lawrence, and then I came back to Salina, and then I moved back to I moved to Manhattan, Kansas for a year, and then I moved back to Salina, and so I never really saw Jonathan. It didn't seem like he was a part of my life anymore, but I always liked the name still. You know, it just rang through me. And so he was like this imaginary friend that was there during my childhood, and then up until, you know, going throughout my life. And so one day, where I am now, like living now, I went through some rough periods when I first moved here. Things weren't going very well. And then I went to meet a psychic. My friend Cynthia Killian, who is a psychic in Wichita, advised me to meet this other psychic, who I won't give out her name, but she was in training. And I was having a really hard time. I was struggling to survive. Things were just falling apart in my life. And I met this lady that was training as a psychic, and I could feel her energy. Now, I already know that I have psychic abilities because the moment I even walked up to her house, I could already feel that, I could already hear it within my head. Someone say, "Don't you know this already?" And it just echoed in my head. And so I went ahead and knocked on the door. And I met her, and she's like, "Come on in, sit down at the table." And she did, like, she sat there, and I could feel her energy, like, opening up my energy. And as we talked, she said, "Do you know who Jonathan is?" I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "He is your guardian angel." I was like, "Whoa." And then she said, "He is not in human form, and he has never been in human form. He is a light being, which is close to an indigo or dark, dark blue." And I was like, "Oh, it's like, I knew this stuff already. I knew who Jonathan was. I had seen him during my acid trips. And so, like, I just thought he was my imagination, for the longest time. Kind of like my imaginary friend that just followed me throughout life." And she said, he will always protect you," he said, "and he will always make sure that you go the right path." And I was like, wow, and I was just flabbergasted by the whole experience that I had with this psychic medium. So I came back here, and then it seemed like Jonathan, after that experience, had reemerged more into my life, and that it became easier to communicate with Jonathan, and I could feel Jonathan, and I could see Jonathan, but it's not like the type of senses you always use, like with your eyes, your ears. Sometimes it happens with touch, but it's within your mind. And Jonathan has always been with me, so, that's my story of how I met Jonathan, my guardian angel, or my spirit guide, or what have you, whatever you want to call it, my protector. So, yeah, Jonathan is my guardian angel, and that's how I know Jonathan. And he's amazing. He's saved me so many times. He's protected me. I know without him, I've been in some sticky situations, and without Jonathan, I know, he always guided me to the right path, and always showed me the right way, so I could always trust him. That's my story. Take it with a grain of salt, if you will, but this is what I believe, and this is how I feel, and the verification continues. Sometimes Jonathan pops up on my ghost radar, on my app. He'll say his name, he'll say Jonathan, and then I know he's in the room and he wants to talk. So, it's a great app. It's called Ghost Radar. So, yeah, sometimes I hear Jonathan, and then I know my spirit guide's here with me.